All right, we're going to talk about proportion. Proportion is the principle of design concerned with size relation of one part to another. So the book talks about how important uh, proportion is in our lives. So it says that it's important when we're buying our clothes. So in this image right here, it's obvious that the clothes don't fit the person rather well, and lets us like our mind wander as to what's going on underneath these clothes. So it's a funny little picture showing this must be his anatomy, so therefore his skeleton must look like that. Or this one right here shows that it must be two little people up on top of each other to explain uh, this choice of clothes. The book also talks about how important proportion is when cooking food. So you don't want to have your food too salty or not enough salt or spices or whatever it is that you put in your food because it'll taste bad. And proportion is important when you are designing architecture. You don't want buildings and houses to be either too big or too small for their intended purposes. All right, so let's talk about scale now. Scale is a size as measured against a standard. So the book says that a 7 foot tall basketball player does not look tall when he is surrounded by other basketball players, but he does look tall when compared with a crowd of regular people. And so when we talk about scale, so I'm going to use Buzz Lightyear as an example of scale. So Buzz Lightyear, fictitiously, he's in the story that he comes from, he is a regular sized person in his own story, and so that is the original of Buzz Lightyear. But he's a toy. So if you look at the scale of Buzz Lightyear with Tim Allen, the guy that does his speaking voice, Buzz Light, the photograph on the right, they are on the same scale. But in the photograph on the left, they are of a different scale. There's Tim Allen is much bigger than the toy, so the scale is way off. And then if we look at this parade float, or this the parade balloon, that Buzz Lightyear is dwarfs everybody that is down there. So Buzz Lightyear is way out of scale in that he's too big. So in one he's too small, one he's the right scale, and then one he's too big. And so the when we talk about size as measured against the standard, what we look at here in this photograph, the standard is all the people. So if we have a crowd of people and they're all the same scale, then that's the standard. And so what stands out is Buzz Lightyear being out of scale. And so artists use scale to in their artworks quite a bit. So this one artist creates furniture that is out of scale with the people. Here's an artist who created these giant feet sticking out of the ceiling. And so the scale is way off. And this artist right here, he's created these giant feet coming out of the ceiling. And then also, not only that, but he's shown like the feet is stepping on a crowd of people down at the bottom. And so the crowd of people, is what's the standard here? Is it the crowd of people because there's a bunch of them? And then the person that is in the gallery is out of scale, and the person that is stepping on them is way out of scale? Or is it the person that's in the gallery that's the standard, and then we have the little group of people that are too small, and then the legs that are too big? You guys know what badminton is, and the little birdie or the shuttlecock that they use to play with. So Klaus Oldenburg is an artist that loves to play with scale. So something that is small enough to fit in your hand, he creates these that are absolutely huge and monstrous. And this is his kind of the humor that is in his work. He takes things that are small and normal and creates giant works of art based on these small things. And you can also talk about scale when you talk about a painting. So this Monet painting is huge, and it's out of scale with most paintings because it takes up this entire wall. And if you also talk about, giant murals, they are way out of scale because they're so large. This one takes up an entire room of this staircase. And then the Rothko Chapel that's here in Houston, these paintings are absolutely huge and they dwarf the people that look at them. So these paintings are way out of scale. You know, when you stand up and get close to one and you look at the immense size of it, you feel very small. And then this giant David by Michelangelo, it's way out of scale. This David painting is way out of scale. Look how huge that thing is. And then you can also go the other way. You know, some famous works of art are very tiny. So the painting behind this lady right here is very small. So it shows scale can go very small or it can go very large. At the beginning of this video, I talked about the proportions of the human figure. So artists often artists are trained to draw the human figure so that they can draw it with the correct proportions. So we have a lot of human figures in a work of art. And by the way, I want you to know that the word figure means the human form in a work of art. So when I say figure, just think of person. So in a portrait, like the image here in the middle, there's a human figure. And then also with like history paintings, you have all these figures that are in it. And when we looked last semester at Greek pottery, we had black figure and red figure. So I just want you to be comfortable with the word figure. It just means a person. And then figurative art is art that references the human figure or just focuses on the figure. You know, even though this is a painting of Patroclus from the story in the Trojan War, it's not really about Patroclus at all. It's about the figure. You know, the artist is showing off his expertise and his technique with painting the human figure in a realistic way. And in all the naked lady paintings of art history, this is all figurative art. It is the human figure that is important in this work of art. And, you know, even with the Birth of Venus painting in the lower center, you know, there may be some story behind it, but that story is only an excuse to paint the human figure, to make it, to show off the artist's capabilities of creating a realistic and desirable image of a woman. So there's these four figure drawing classes that artists have to take. And so we get a lot of drawings from artists that have taken these classes. All right, your book talks about the proportions of the human figure. And one of the things it mentions is that although a 7-foot tall basketball player and a 5-foot tall dancer vary in size, they both have the same proportions of body parts. And the book says that the body parts cannot be explained in inches or centimeters. They can only be defined in ratios of one body part to another. What that means is, you know, let's say if one person's head is like 1 foot tall, then not everybody's head is 1 foot tall, or it doesn't work like that. So the standard unit of measuring for drawing the human body is the head. So let me show you how that works. The average height of a person is 7.5 heads tall. So even though I'm 6'3" and somebody next to me might be 5'4", we're both, even though we're different sizes, we are both 7.5 heads tall. And this is how it works. The standard, yeah, I just read that. So, but this is what it looks like. So you take the height of the head, and then you repeat it over and over, and the person is generally around 7.5 heads tall. For drawing, we use a head that is 8 heads tall, and this is called heroic proportion. And I find that in art history, so let me back up. Me calling this 8 heads tall person heroic proportion, that is what I call it when I teach my art class, not art history. In art history, they have other proportions that they call heroic. But because I've been teaching this for so long, I'm just going to go with this. And it really quite often, like, it doesn't really matter unless you're in a group of art historians and artists arguing over the subject, which, you know, in my lifetime, I've never been a part of. So, but so the first head is from the top of the head. The first head goes from the top of the head to the chin. The second head is from the chin to the chest. The The third head is from the chest to the navel. The fourth head is from the navel to the crotch. And then the fifth head is from the crotch to mid thigh. The sixth head is just to the below the knees. And then the seventh head is to mid shin. And then the eighth head is from mid shin down to the bottom of the feet. And not everybody is equal on this, and not everybody is the exact same. By the way, if your arms are relaxed and down, not like in this picture, let's go back to so here we have the elbows are right at the third head, and then the wrists are right at the fourth head. And so if this guy relaxed his fingers, all right, and not made fists, his fingertips would be right about mid thigh between the fourth head and the fifth head. And so then the reason I mention that is because when we get to this image right here, Michael Phelps was an Olympic swimmer. I don't remember which Olympics he was in, but he won a ton of medals. He was the fastest swimmer. And one of the things that helped him so much is that he has a very unusual anatomy. He has long arms and short legs. And apparently, long arms and short legs helps you to be a very fast swimmer. And that was so that my point is not, even though this rule of where the heads belong is a general rule of the general person and the average, it's not. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody is just a little bit off, because otherwise we'd all be the same. We'd all be robots made in a factory. So Michelangelo uses the 8 heads tall method for creating the statue of David. And in comics, they will often use this 8 head for these heroic figures. But but sometimes they will use figures that are 9 or even 10 heads tall for dramatic effects. So like, this figure here on the right, she looks a little bit like odd. That's because she is 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10 heads tall. And then also in fashion, they will use figures that are tall and thin for their drawings. And these figures are definitely not 7 or 8 heads tall. And then the proportions of the head and face, you have certain proportions. So I don't know if you know that your head is divided into 4 areas. We have from the hairline to the top of the head, from the hairline to the eyes, from the eyes to between the nose and the mouth, and then between the nose and the mouth down to the chin. And then the front of our face is divided up into different sections. And this photograph on the right is very strange looking, but it shows that our head is 5 eyes wide. So you take the width of your eye and you repeat it 5 times in a row, and that creates the width of your whole face. And then if you take the width, if you drop down the lines straight from the corners of your eye down, you get the outer nostrils of your nose. And then to get the width of the lips, you draw lines from the center between your 2 eyes, and you line it up with the nose, the outside of the nostril, and that will give you the width of your mouth. And so when we see photographs of people that have these odd proportions, it really looks strange to us. The guy on the left looks like he has a small head or maybe an extremely large or thick neck. His anatomy is out of proportion. The guy in the center, his forehead looks too big. So his proportions are they deviate from those normal proportions of the head that I just showed you. The guy on the right, his neck looks very long. So, his proportions are different. And this is what makes us all look very different. That's why we're not all the same. We all have different proportions. And there's different apps you can get on your phone to change the proportions that are on your face. So then, how do artists use proportion? When artists want the viewer to recognize the person, place, or thing being shown, they use correct proportion. and it creates the illusion of reality. So, for example, David painted this portrait of Napoleon, and I would expect Napoleon actually looked like this. It looks correct. Although I've never seen Napoleon in person, it looks realistic. It looks correct. And so we have this series of many artists, especially when they do portraits and history paintings. They try to be as correct as they can because they want to give a sense of reality to their pictures. So they want to get a sense of correctness and they want these people to be recognized. So there's a lot of artists that use correct proportions. Courbet and Renoir, Donatello, and then even me. So these are a couple of my drawings that I did, and I use correct proportions, and they're portraits. So I wanted them to look like the people that I was drawing. And I will say that as somebody that does portraits and realistic portraits, that it can be very dull. Adhering to a photograph and not deviating from it, not putting any kind of interest or things that are fun and different in there. It can be very boring, although it's technically challenging. So some artists use exaggeration and distortion to express feelings and ideas. And exaggeration and distortion are deviations from the expected normal proportions. So that's where you get like caricatures and like comics. People that draw comics, their figures often are not realistic. It's not realistic proportions. And in art history, we see that a lot in Native American art and in African art. That these images are distorted and exaggerated. We've got these Mayan figures that are exaggerated. The Easter Island sculptures are definitely exaggerated, even with scale. These things are absolutely huge. And then the faces that are on these Australian and Aboriginal images are very abstracted and skewed. These tiki sculptures from Hawaii are abstracted and distorted. And El Greco, the Mannerist artist, distorted the human figure for effect. Michelangelo distorts the female figure. Like, look how muscly the arms are on these female sculptures or these female figures. On the right, that is Catherine with her Catherine wheel. And look at how muscly her arms are. On the left, that's a female figure with these massive arms. You often get exaggeration and distortion in modern art as well. Picasso goes to the extreme with exaggerating and distorting the figures. In Cubism, the figures are distorted and exaggerated. The Chagall figures on the left, look like they're floating because they're so in love, but that's not realistic. The Gaston Lachase sculpture on the right, look, her head looks really small when compared to her body, or maybe her body is just very big. And she has these very wide sculptures and these very strong hips. And that gives her sculpture a sense of strength, showing this very strong woman. Botero exaggerates his figures. He makes them overly large. And Ernie Barnes makes his figures overly skinny. Kirchner, the German expressionist, makes his figures abstracted and they have deviations from the norm. Bacon abstracts the popes. De Kooning abstracts the woman. Goya abstracts the figure. And then I too, these are a couple of my drawings as well, because I told you about how I draw realistically. Well, I find that to be boring. So I made changes to these figures, and I really try hard to exaggerate and distort them. And I find that to be much more fun to do when I draw. All right, that'll be it for now.